Even something as big as the oceans is not limitless. And even a resource that we may take for granted as much as, say, fresh water, is in fact very, very, very scarce and very precious in many places around the world, and becoming more so. How is it that the geographic is really working to make people appreciate that these things that we maybe can take for granted aren't limitless?
Well, I think that's one of the strengths of this institution. I think we identify issues that are crucial. In my opinion, freshwater sanitation is the biggest problem facing planet Earth today. And you may say, well, what about energy? You know, I can ride a bicycle if my gas tank is empty, but I can't go more than a day or so without water. And you just cannot, Homo sapiens cannot live without water. And what we're seeing is a finite amount of water on planet Earth. There's no more water here today than there was during the days of the dinosaurs. But the population is expanding so rapidly on planet Earth, we all require water, that water is becoming a very precious commodity. And indeed, water may well be the leading indicator of stability in countries to come. And that's going to change over time. Take a country like China. China is dependent on an awful lot of water. I won't say the majority of its water supply, but a very large percentage from the glacial melt of the Himalayas. If you look at a photograph of the Himalayas taken in the 1930s versus one today, you will instantly see a tremendous amount of the glaciers have disappeared from the Himalayas, which means that you're not going to have melt. You're not going to have glacial melt. It's not coming down into the great rivers. It's not going from the great rivers into the cities. They're going to have to change their living habits, and that's not very far away. Interestingly enough, as you're seeing global warming, you're seeing the glaciers melting at a faster pace, so you're getting more flooding in Asia. But the flooding is just preceding the drought, because when the glaciers melt, there's going to be no flooding. There's going to be no flow of water, or it's going to be very restricted. And that's going to be a huge issue. Then you take places like Africa, where you have a very high birth rate, and water is extraordinarily scarce. Now, fortunately, Africa has a very extensive underground but deep water aquifers that they can draw upon. But right now, that's just out of the question for most African villages. They just don't have the money to invest in deep water wells. So that's going to become an issue. It drives many cultures in Africa today. Traditionally, women gather water. They'll spend 4 or 5 hours a day just going to find a gallon jug full of basically fairly putrid water. The girls are doing this. The girls are not going to school. If you had water in those villages, indeed, if you had water in a school compound, you'd find the whole educational system would change. But it's all driven basically by water.